Hello and welcome to last week's episode of the Trash Talk Podcast. I'm your host JJ, and with me I have Sergej, and I haven't made that joke in a while because we haven't been this late in a while. But hey, that's life.
Yeah.
Stuff happens. We're here now.
Gonna talk about something which I totally did not forget what we were gonna talk about.
I love how I know for a fact that you have the document with our notes open. So the question is, should vaccinations be mandatory?
Yes.
Now, obviously, we're talking at the time when coronavirus vaccinations are happening. This topic was not originally planned specifically for this, so I think it's worthwhile to approach it definitely a bit more broadly, but, I mean, I don't think we can get around talking about the coronavirus vaccine if we're talking about vaccinations, so,
True. Kind of tough to avoid.
Yes. So, okay, should vaccinations be mandatory? I mean, that's literally the question. Don't need to reword that.
Probably not. Especially if there's severe side effects that can happen.
Okay, yes.
Which might even be worse than the thing they're vaccinating against.
I mean, yeah, that's rough, but that's not that common. Most vaccines are relatively safe.
True.
My take on this is actually also that, I mean, I've always said before, right? I believe in personal liberty. I definitely think that is, like, probably one of the highest values in my moral system. So that means, of course, that people should have the choice whether they want to get vaccinated or not. That has to be kind of a thing. But on the other hand, this goes beyond your personal liberty, because
yep.
Of course, everyone has, what is the typical American cliche, like, a right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, right? And it's like, if, life is in there, so that means not death. I mean, of course, we'll all die someday, but there's no need to die of a preventable disease. And the problem there becomes that there's so many diseases that we have pretty much eliminated by just vaccinating everyone against them, and then anti-vaxxers came along, and diseases that were thought dead all of a sudden started coming back. And
yeah,
that's just not good either. So there's kind of your pro-mandatory vaccination argument, and I think that's something that has to be weighed for sure.
and
This is where you are supposed to, like, chime in with your thoughts.
yeah. Shit. But yeah, I agree with you that oh god, the sun.
They're coming! Sergej, quick, hide!
My image is pure white right now.
Yes.
Yes. What I wanted to say is that yes, for preventable diseases that like actually don't really have side effects to them, kind of really God, I can't phrase it right. It would make a lot of sense to make vaccination against those diseases mandatory.
So, my solution to the problem is probably not quite as dramatic, because, again, personal liberty, and that of course includes bodily autonomy, so you can't have medical procedures done against your will. And also, inversely, of course, that means rights to certain procedures if you want them to have them done. Like, currently a big issue in the US, of course, about the Republicans trying to get rid of the Roe v. Wade case and the abortion rights that come with that, as Sergej makes himself a bit darker. That, you know what, out of context that could sound kind of wrong, but we're just gonna go with it. But, of course, with the vaccination debate, I think we kind of already have a relatively good system there. In a lot of places. Not in all places, but where it's like, if you don't vaccinate your children will not be able to go to kindergarten, to schools, right? Because they are a danger to others. And I feel like that is a good way of dealing with that, where it's like, okay, it might not be mandatory to get vaccinated, but if you don't, you're gonna be pretty much limited in what you can do in life because you're literally a danger to others, right? So, to some degree, I think that makes sense, because while I do think that everyone should get vaccinated for, again, like a lot of those like early childhood stuff, that vaccinations that are pretty standard and have not really had that much backlash in the past, I feel like should pretty much be kind of like a societal standard, and I definitely think that societal pressures, for example, make sense. A legal mandate is always a bit rough with these sort of things, because at that point we do start getting a little bit into personal freedoms, and I just don't feel comfortable with the idea that the government can prescribe you to take certain things, because while in essence for those vaccines, and of course now it's getting darker again, that is not necessarily
obviously
a bad idea, right? But that also sets a very uncomfortable precedent for what else can they make you take, right?
Sure, I guess. I personally don't really have anything against governments being able to prescribe you, like to make you have to go through a medical procedure, as long as it really does not harm you, or at least that much, which is kind of vague.
Yeah, first of all, of course, vagueness when it comes to government powers is always a bit problematic.
Yeah.
And then second of all, it's always like, who determines, right? Like, what is necessary, what constitutes a little harm, and all that stuff. And while I do think on some level we would be able to control that as population as well, because of course, you'd have to get doctors involved to actually do the procedures, and I mean, technically you might have to have, police literally drag people there and all that stuff, which, again, not a good look. So, I can definitely see the argument, but I think it's probably better to just make sure to combat misinformation and to kind of incentivize people to do the right thing rather than force them to. That makes the arguments of the opposition weaker, where like, oh, tyrannical government is forcing this upon us and all that stuff, because they can't really say that. And especially because most anti-vaxxers are not anti-vax because of any sort of legitimate issues with the vaccines, but usually because of hypothetical concerns or like old disproven studies and all that stuff. I mean, there was that study that supposedly showed that one very specific vaccine, supposedly according to that study, had a positive correlation to autism, which was later thoroughly debunked. And not only were the results by no means replicatable, but also they were tearing apart the flaws in the actual original study. And, of course, the guy who made the original study had a stake in a company that produced an alternative vaccine to the one that he was going against. In other words, he had a motive. And that is like the only link between, for example, vaccines and autism is like a relatively old disproven study. So, if that's what makes you not want to get your children vaccinated, then you probably need to learn more about the scientific process and how that all works, because that's all something that is missing a lot in the world, right? You've had science classes, and I feel like we maybe have been taught like the general idea of what the scientific method is like once, very briefly, And otherwise, we've mostly been taught, well, things that have already been discovered, right? Because, of course, you can't set up your science classes in a way where the students discover new information, like completely like novel ideas, because they're not at that level. They don't have the prerequisite knowledge to really build upon to reliably make that happen, and even then it's still a long and arduous process. But then not really...
Too dark now.
Not really teaching your students how to find the truth, and rather instead just telling them this is how things are, of course doesn't exactly encourage them to, if they get confronted with conflicting information, to be able to ascertain what is more likely truthful, and to know that if something is found in science now, it might be that is maybe not accurate, and that in the future we'll find more accurate information. But as for now, this is the best information that we have, and we're going to just work on that. And then if the information changes, so do our approaches. And that is really something that people need to know. Because then that way I think they would trust more in science, which of course is another huge problem right now, that people don't trust in science, and that kind of is where that anti-vax movement comes from in big parts. People not trusting in like the new scientific discoveries, and they're like, oh yeah, like some guy back when said there might be troubles with autism, and we haven't personally seen it disproven, so thereby, you know, even though it has been disproven, thereby we're still going to believe it. And of course, specifically with the autism thing, it is a bit inconvenient that a lot of children develop their first symptoms of autism shortly after getting their childhood vaccinations. Not because the vaccinations are causing them, but because the vaccinations are always done around a certain age, and you develop the first symptoms around a certain age usually, and that happens to align pretty well.
Yeah. Man.
You are allowed to say more than one word.
Yeah, I know. I'm just phrasing my thoughts together. But isn't like the main issue that anti-vaxxers and also other conspiracy theorists have not really the distrust in science, but kind of being able to what's the basically discovering something new, or like knowing something that not a lot of people know, like feeling smarter than other people. Isn't it more about that?
Right, that definitely is a thing. I mean, the problem is, right, the kind of distrusting science, and thereby distrusting the mainstream, and the idea of having secret knowledge kind of, in a way, go hand in hand, of course.
Kind of, sort of, yeah.
So yeah, conspiracy theories are generally kind of powered by the idea that there is secret knowledge that not everyone has. And by people thinking that they have that secret knowledge, they feel superior in their position to the other people that have the more actually scientifically sourced information. And because they think that their knowledge is special, they thereby tend to disregard what they're being told from other sources. It's interesting because I think we talked about this before, right? Where you are more easily misled if the whole hook behind that is that you tell them that everyone else is already being misled, right? Like, you tell them, oh, they're just misled and this is actually the truth, and they believe it, which is very ironic in its own right, but that's just what it is.
There wouldn't the way to combat this be teaching about these methods in school and how to make sure, or like decrease the chance of one being misled themselves?
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. I mean,
probably in tandem with the scientific method.
Yeah. So yeah, this would either be something that would also be taught in like a science class, where it's like or that doesn't really make sense though. In a science class, I guess like something like a philosophy class would be where that would work relatively well. I mean, you could literally. Then again, for us, for example, we didn't have a a philosophy, like a mandatory philosophy class. So, but some like you could technically have an entire class about epistemology, that being the science of truth, where you find that sort of stuff. And of course, then also you could, in math classes, you could teach people about how statistics can be used in misleading ways. Sometimes intentionally, sometimes not, right? Sometimes you look at a statistic that is perfectly neutrally presented, and you look at it and you draw the wrong conclusions because there's maybe a third factor that you're not aware of, or something else that isn't immediately obvious. A third factor, of course, is the whole thing about women who own horses live longer, right? Like, it's true. That doesn't mean that there's a cause and effect there. There's a third cause.
Yep.
It's money. If you're richer, you have a higher likelihood of living longer for a variety of reasons. And if you're rich, you also can afford to own a horse. So yes, statistically speaking, women who own horses live longer. Does not mean you should go in debt to buy a horse. That's probably going to cause the exact opposite effect.
Yeah. Man, the sun just won't cooperate.
So, anything else about vaccination in general? Because I feel like there is a very topical thing we could talk about as well.
Don't have anything immediately to say about that.
So, okay, so what are your thoughts on the COVID vaccines and because there is also a lot of resistance to that right now, with varying reasons why people don't want to get vaccinated, some of which are plainly ridiculous, and other ones are kind of reasonable, but also way overblown. Of course, the most absurd being the microchip one, which I still find hilarious.
Oh, yeah.
The exact kind of people that carry their smartphone with GPS enabled, and, I mean, even if you have it disabled, who knows, around with them at all times, are also the ones that are worried that they'll get implanted a chip that gets to track their location. Not to mention that the whole technology to make a chip that can be hidden in a syringe with a clear fluid that you can't see, that then gets injected into your body, and then lives there without getting damaged, and somehow powering itself, is in and of itself quite miraculous. The fact that they can more easily track you already is also... it makes it kind of ridiculous. I know this is not the only concern. I just like pointing that one out because it's kind of ridiculous.
Man, we all know the truth. 5G causes COVID. Something like that, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was the prevalent theory. And again, right, I can kind of see how you would come to that conclusion. Right? Let's say you don't know anything about the electromagnetic spectrum, and you don't know anything about virology, and you just know that 5G towers are being built, and all of a sudden people are having this new disease. Like, if you don't know how either of those two things work, you could kind of see how thing A happens, and thing B happens, could lead you to think that there is a causation. There isn't. Correlation does not mean causation.
Yes. TBH, I didn't even see the correlation there until you pointed it out.
I mean, I believe that is where the theory actually comes from. Well, the conspiracy theory comes from, I believe, was that shortly after 5G towers were put up places, people started having COVID. Now, not specifically those places, just in general, but, you know. Yeah. If you don't think about it too hard, it makes sense.
Nah.
As with a lot of conspiracy theories, it makes sense until you think about it, okay?
Maybe.
No, but I mean, seriously,
people
had health concerns about 5G towers already. And some of those are not as ridiculous on the surface, right? Where it's like, they're using wavelengths of radiation that we haven't previously... Well, radiation. They're using electromagnetic wavelengths that we haven't previously used for communication, on that scale at the very least. And people are worried that because waves on the electromagnetic spectrum can affect humans, they were worried that those waves might affect humans. They don't. But in theory, that is plausible, right? So there was already people who were worried that it might cause cancer, which at the very least is more reasonable than COVID, because it's not a virus and it is actually in fact caused by radiation, or can be caused by radiation. Thereby, it makes sense. It still doesn't work that way, but again, if you don't know exactly the wavelengths and the technical specifications, I could see why you would assume that that's possible. I mean, then you would reasonably have to think that if that were a real problem, then actual experts in those fields, like doctors and like nuclear physicists, whoever's responsible for electromagnetic waves in physics, right? Like, someone would have probably said, oh, this is not a good idea, you should not do this. And that should have probably propagated. And the fact that no one did say that from an actual position of where they would know what they're talking about, from an actual point of expertise, should tell you that there's probably not a problem. Again, just because some rando is saying that it could be a problem, and then none of the experts are, should at least make you think for a second. And especially if then experts are literally saying that it isn't that way, and explaining in as much detail as they can without losing you why, then, you know, maybe you should take that into account.
Yeah. Okay, because I'm not really up to date with all the COVID vaccination stuff, could you tell me like the more reasonable arguments against it?
Okay, so there's a couple of things. First of all, it is, I think it's a relatively universal thing with all the vaccines that at some stage of the vaccination process, you're likely going to have like a fever and maybe some mild cold symptoms. That is
that is kind of how common. Vaccines work.
Yes. Now, if you dose a vaccine perfectly and it's been, you know, in use for a long time that you could have perfectly fine-tuned it and blah, 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 then of course you could minimize that effect a little bit. But right now, the current COVID vaccines we have tend to give you some cold symptoms, so people are already not wanting to have it because I guess they think they can avoid getting the actual disease, which you're probably not gonna be as reliably be able to do as you think, so it still is better to get some mild cold symptoms for a day or two than to get COVID and have those for 2 weeks, plus probably long-term, plus possibly long-term damage that, as far as we know, can last for the rest of your life. Which is to say, we don't know how long it can last, but it has been shown to at least last for a couple of months on people who had it relatively early on and still have side effects to this day. And so, yeah, I brief interruption, but I just have to say I love working with artificial light. It's so beautifully consistent. I mean, I literally, like, every time we record the podcast, I close my blinds and I turn on all the artificial lighting, because then at least I know exactly what it's going to look like, right? Like, this should look pretty much always the same. As a matter of fact, it's a bit darker than usual now that I think about it, because my light set is not quite where it's supposed to be. But the point is that was my mistake, not anything to do with the lights themselves. That if we had a proper studio with
videos are all fake,
with like fixed lighting, that would be a lot better. Anyways, back to COVID, right? So the side effects, quote unquote, that are basically intended. I literally love how at first it was reported as side effects, and then immediately all the scientists were like, no, this is how it's supposed to work. And I'm like, oh yeah, I'm a programmer, I know how this works. It's a bug, not a feature. Wait, it's a feature, not a bug. It's not a bug, it's a feature. Yeah, but no, seriously, like that's just how vaccines work, as Sergej said, and that's somewhat unavoidable. And yes, it might not be pleasant, but let me tell you, it's probably it's like it's better than getting COVID. That's the whole point, right? It's a milder version, basically. So that's one thing. And then the other thing is some not so intended side effects that have happened where I know the AstraZeneca vaccine had a thing where some people have gotten some other serious medical side effects. I don't know exactly what it was, but it was something about it damaging your brain or something, like some serious stuff, right?
Ooh.
And I think like a handful of people have actually died from that. But A, it turns out that it pretty much only affects women. B, it predominantly affects young women. And C, it's only one of the vaccines that's currently in circulation. In other words, just don't give that particular vaccine to that particular group. Second of all, I think at the time that was first reported in Germany, there was 6 cases where people have been affected, and I think one of them had died after millions of people have been vaccinated. So the chance of you actually dying from the vaccine would have still been significantly smaller than the chance of you getting COVID and then dying from that. Granted, again, if you're a young woman, probably just get a different vaccine, right? Like, there are others that don't have that particular side effect. But
can I just say that I hate the sun?
I mean, fair. So, that is definitely a somewhat valid concern, but again, it only affects certain groups, and it's only one of the vaccines, so just act accordingly. And I think there's some other, like, mild things that have happened here and there, but, like, nothing that, like, is consistently worrying, I would say. And also, what was the other thing I was going to say? Oh, right. Some people were worried about the fact that the vaccine was produced very quickly and was approved very quickly, but that's just because they're kind of, like, normally vaccines take longer, yes, but normally we're not that desperate to get one made, and we don't invest as much money and manpower into it. So that's more just a testament to how much money and effort and coordination went into making those than it really is a legitimate concern about, or more than it should be a concern, I guess I should say, about the safety of the vaccine. There's other stuff like, we don't know the long-term effects, because some of those are made with a new method, the mRNA method, that is the Moderna anti-BioNTech vaccine, for example. And we've never made a vaccine on that basis as far as I'm aware, and so we don't know what any long-term effects could be. But the fact of the matter is, we would probably know if there was effects on the human body besides the intended one after the trials, even if actual symptoms of those effects might not show early. We would still be able to take blood tests where we could probably see some impact. So the likelihood of there being long-term effects, especially like way down the line of a vaccine you take now, is minimal to begin with. And I think doctors have said most medication that has that can have long-term side effects, they usually still show after a matter of months, not years. And considering that we've been vaccinating people for a while now, we would know by now if there was long-term effects, more likely than not. So, while a lot of those concerns seem logical on the surface, it still is better to get vaccinated than not. Okay? Get vaccinated, people.
Yeah.
Get vaccinated, Sergej.
Probably will someday.
Just get an appointment, for fuck's sake.
I have to talk on the phone for that.
I guess, yeah, that's probably the easiest way to do it, yeah. Do it. Oh, by the way, for those who are wondering why the podcast is a bit late, yeah, the fever is for real, yeah. So yeah. I guess I should mention this. If I'm urging people to get the vaccine, I should probably mention this. Yes, I got my first shot, earlier this week. Well, I guess last week by the time this goes out. The point is, I ended up having a somewhat bad fever for like a little over a day. Like, it started like 9 to 10 hours after I got the shot and lasted, I think, 24 to 36 hours roundabout. Fever, headache. I didn't have any other cold symptoms, but it was by no means pleasant. but I do it again, right? It's not like this is like now changing my opinion on this, right? I still insist that is way better than actually getting COVID. And of course, in my case, that was on the first shot because I also took AstraZeneca. I believe for BioNTech and Moderna, you are more likely to experience those sort of effects after the second shot. That's also apparently a thing where for AstraZeneca, the effects of the cold-like effects are on the first shot, where on the other ones it's on the second one. Which, that's weird, but whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I really do hate the sun.
I made the very clever choice to plan our podcast recording to be literally the night after I had taken the vaccine, which was not a good idea. To be fair, I only knew like 2 days in advance that I actually had that appointment because, organization was a mess. But hey, I finally got my appointment, and I finally got my first shot, and I'm gonna get my second one in like almost 3 months. Because, so for Moderna and BioNTech, I think it was supposed to be around 6 weeks between shots, and for AstraZeneca, I think it was 8 to 12, and I think I ended up being closer to the 12. But hey, after that,
yeah,
I'll be good. I should not be able to. Well, I mean, you can still, of course, come in contact with the virus, and it can still get into your body, but it won't be able to propagate there for long, meaning you won't get any serious symptoms. And new studies show that you also can spread it after you've been vaccinated. We weren't sure about that for a long while, but new data suggests that once you got your second shot, and I think 2 weeks have passed because your body needs to actually adapt to that, then you also cannot spread COVID anymore. And at least in the US on a federal level,
that's good.
They've also lifted mask mandates for people that have been vaccinated and have waited 2 weeks after. That is specifically in the US and specifically at a federal level. Local laws might vary, and also individual buildings can make their own rules, basically. Well, or rather, their owners can. So, this is not blanket legal advice. Check your actual situation. But so it seems that the vaccines might actually help us get back to more or less normal, which we weren't 100% sure about before. So that at least that is nice. And of course, herd immunity only works if we get at least 70% of people vaccinated, which, especially right now, I believe we still haven't cleared the vaccine for children, so that means pretty much most adults. So get vaccinated. I'm both talking to you and the audience.
Yep.
Sergej, get vaccinated.
I know, I should. Yeah.
I think that was everything on vaccines, wasn't it?
Probably, yeah.
Sergej.
Yep.
What is your fact of the week?
My fact of the week is that there are actually, there is a position in film production that is called Best Boy.
I know!
There's actually 2 of them.
Okay.
There's Best Boy Electric and Best Boy Grip.
Yes.
Yes. And yes, that is the official position name, job name,
yep.
whatever.
Says in the credits every time.
It's great. Yep. And do you actually know what that person does?
Okay, see, I've literally seen it in credits before, which is why I'm like, oh, that's a weird title.
Yep.
Then I've literally seen it mentioned in a video what they do, and I forgot. So please enlighten me.
Okay. So they are basically the direct assistant to the people responsible for the light departments.
Okay.
There's actually 2 light departments, one dealing with actual lamps and electronics, and one only dealing with balance boards and other stuff where
wow.
they don't handle they don't handle electronics.
Imagine being responsible for indirect lighting.
Yes. And that's like an entire department.
Yeah.
On a film set. And the Best Boy Grip is the direct assistant to that. And Best Boy Electric, as the name suggests, to the head of the actual lights department.
By the way, just because I'm making fun of the fact that there is an entire separate department for that does not mean that I'm devaluating the work that people are doing there. I know it's important. It just seems funny to me that that's like an entire separate department just for like basically the indirect lighting, just redirecting the light that comes from other departments, or I guess if you're shooting outside, maybe the sun. Though, as we've seen, the sun is very unpredictable. Well,
true.
I guess technically the sun is very predictable, clouds are unpredictable, and even that only to some degree, but you get the gist.
Yes, so, and because of that, the Best Boy, most of the time, oftentimes kind of steps in for the head of the department. So he does a lot of the same stuff that the head does. But usually, as far as I know at least, he is basically responsible for the logistics of all the equipment that needs to be on set. He ensures that all the lights or all the bounce boards are there when they are needed. That
is actually a very important job. Like, you sometimes underestimate the importance of logistics people, but like, I mean, we don't need logistics people because like there's literally just two of us right now. And also right now we're not even in the same place and we have our own equipment. But like, even if we were filming somewhere else, we would just grab all of our equipment, like probably literally all of it, and just stuff it in like one singular cardboard box and just carry it around. Because we don't have a huge amount of equipment and we don't have a huge amount of people. But like, once you scale things, logistics becomes incredibly important. Because the last thing you want is to show up at a film set and be missing like 2 bounce boards and you can't light your scene properly. And now you have to delay the entire shooting process by like a couple hours, possibly, to like drive in new boards. I mean, I guess those you might be able to improvise somewhat because they're basically just white boards as far as I'm aware. Or, well, sometimes they're also like silvery foil boards, I think. But
yeah.
But like that is maybe somewhat replaceable, but still, right? Like, you don't necessarily want to. Yeah, logistics is important.
Yep.
My fact of the week is not about logistics, but it is still very interesting, and that is, do you know when the first? I don't know what the official thing is. I think it's the first powered flight that transported a human. I don't think it's the first powered flight in overall, but you know the Wright brother flight, the infamous one, the famous one.
Yeah.
You know when that happened?
Oh god. Wasn't it like something to the end of the 19th century?
December 14th, 1903. Start of the 20th.
Okay, close.
The point that is interesting here is that, of course, in April, we had the first ever powered flight on another planet. Well, I would like to personally call that the first ever powered flight of a man-made object on another planet, because there's no guaranteeing that there is no other flight going on in the universe. But that happened this year. And by the way, they had a little piece of the wing of the original Wright brothers plane, like, tucked in there.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I saw that on the press conference. They actually talked about that, like, after the flight. And they also named the place where they flew Wright Brothers Field. None of that is my fact of the week. That is all just set up. What I find fascinating is something that we've actually talked about before. Technically, this all happened within one lifespan. And this is not the hypothetical one lifespan thing where I'm saying that, like, Jean Calment lived to be like 122 and thereby this fits. No. Kane Tanaka, actually the last I checked, longest living person on the planet. I'm actually going to double check that because it's been a couple days since I checked. And she's kind of old, so she might have died. Kane Tanaka. I mean, that doesn't really change my fact. Kane Tanaka, born 2nd of January 1903, is a Japanese supercentenarian, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, it doesn't say that she died, so I'm assuming she's still alive. To this day. But anyways, she was alive literally for both of those. Because she was born in January of 1903. And the Wright brothers flight was in December of that same year. And this year, the Ingenuity flight, the Ingenuity flight was this year. Word order. And she's still alive. So yes, there was literally one person alive for the first powered flight, at the very least the first manned one. I think there was people who were saying that, again, there was other powered flights before then, as like tests and whatnot, and the first powered flight on a different planet happened within one person's lifetime.
This is crazy to think about.
I know. This woman predates airplanes! That's weird! She's still alive!
Man, mind blown.
Right? It's always that thing when you think about, like, what there's people around that, like, or that there are people around that predate certain things that we just kind of take for granted. Right? I mean, and you know, like, pointing out computers and whatnot, like, yeah, sure, they're, like, relatively new. But planes? Planes! Yep. There's someone living today who predates the airplane?
That is just crazy. I cannot wrap my mind about that. Around that.
Yeah.
This doesn't make sense.
I know, right? It's crazy. You know what's also crazy? Our halftime show.
Oh, yes.
Okay, besides the fact that this transition was kind of mediocre, this is, once again, the TrashcanTV Higher or Lower. We're bringing it back! I mean, you know, Sergej made it, and it seemed like a waste to only do it once. So, this is the question, once again, which of these videos has more views? And I once again did not adjust the seat to actually make it so we can see the view numbers. We're just gonna have to live with that. So, we have, from the Untitled Trash Bowl, Bip versus Crown Cooker in the first round, or a Hearthstone report about new cards for Rise of Shadows.
Gonna go with Trash Bowl.
I'm also gonna go with Trash Bowl. So, actually, you know what? Let's actually...
But I don't know.
Let's actually play it this time, now that you mentioned it, let's play it as a versus, like we do it with the other Higher Lower. So, this is all...
Oh, okay, sure.
So now this is all on you. I just decided that, because you already decided, okay, Trash Bowl, which is... Honestly, I did not expect that, okay? I also expected it to be the other one. Okay, let me go. So first of all, we have a video about Q-Block that is pretty old. Or our most recent actually, there was one in between. But one of our more recent podcasts that has probably, like... I'm gonna give it to Q-Block. It's so old it shouldn't be correct, but I'm gonna say it's correct. Yeah, of course it is. 34-1. People, watch the pod... Oh, right, it doesn't work. If I tell people that are watching this to watch the podcast, they're already watching the... Tell your friends to watch the podcast, for fuck's sake. Okay. Maximum Hearthstone damage, music high or low, Christmas economics 101. Trash Talk podcast number 23. Or, from the very first Trash Bowl, I think this is the first one, the Savage Voldoom one, Phoebe versus Lemonade in the first round. And this is still on me, because I just answered the previous one correctly. I remembered what I said earlier. And I'm gonna go with Trash Bowl because it's not the podcast. Yeah, 72-18.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, the Trash Bowl announcement video for unclear. Wait, Hearthstone tournament? Yeah, it literally doesn't say which expansion.
2020.
Well,
yep.
Yeah, but there's like 3 Trash Bowls every year, so who knows? I think it was the first one in 2020, probably, which might have been the very first one, because I think after that I did actually put the expansion in there, but I don't know. Or a random Tavern Brawl video. I'm gonna go with the Trash Bowl announcement, which won 162-41. Once again, a podcast or a Trash Bowl video. I'm gonna go with the Trash Bowl video. I don't even have to know what the details are. 471-31. One of our World of Warcraft videos from the second channel, or one of our podcasts from the main channel. I'm gonna go with podcast on the main channel. And it is correct. 20-28. That one was close.
Yeah.
A pack opening or a Batman The Enemy Within video. I'm gonna go with pack opening. 403-28. Easy peasy. A Hearthstone Tavern Brawl video or a Hearthstone Battlegrounds video. I'm gonna go with Tavern Brawl, but it's difficult because it's 72-80. Who would have known? Sergej, your turn.
That is close.
Year of the Raven Remembrance. The Hearthstone Year of the Raven challenge where you played a deck containing only cards from the Year of the Raven, or Tombs of Terror, the Hearthstone report, where we, I guess, talked about the Tombs of Terror being announced.
Tombs of Terror? Maybe?
Honestly, I
don't know.
370-54, so I mean, everyone probably picked it too.
Okay.
Hearthstone Budget Face Hunter
decks
or Trash Bowl. Yeah, was that your choice?
Yes.
I mean, yeah, 937. That actually was pretty bad for a budget deck, but yeah, obviously. Best deck now. Heirs of Outland Murloc Paladin or.
He said it couldn't be done.
Hearthstone Heirs of Outland
Murloc Priest.
So, Sergej, Murloc Priest or Murloc Paladin?
Oh boy. Oh god.
Okay, for a bit of Hearthstone background.
They're really similar, and also both are really clickbaity.
Okay, so the thing is, right? Murloc Paladin is actually a good deck. Murloc Priest is just a dumb idea. Like, that's why like the titles are the way they are. Like, it's just us trying a dumb thing on purpose. I legitimately don't know though, but I believe you're still going. So
yeah. Best deck right now, Murloc Paladin.
I would think so, but I don't know. Yeah, 621-84. I think it was early in the expansion then. Hearthstone Puzzle Labs number 3 or Galakron's Awakening chapter 3 part 1. Is it part 2? I don't know, the evil side. Which are both single player content for Hearthstone. So they're very similar in that regard. Obviously the if that helps, the right one is newer. I don't know if that makes it better or worse, but that's a fact.
I don't know. I'm gonna go with the right one. Airbell over Dragon Blight.
Yep, 79-43. To 30. Why did I say 43? Why did I say 43? Anyways, Trash Bowl video from, once again, the first round, or a Token Druid deck spotlight from 2019.
I am gonna go with the Trash Bowl.
Okay, first round matches don't tend
Especially because there's Alex in it.
Oh, there is Alex in it. Alex versus Ivan. First of all, I can tell you that that is not a draw for people. Like, one of us playing does not help. And second of all, I'm gonna think that I think the Token Druid video might have been early in the expansion, in which case it might win. But I don't know. I'm gonna click it.
Ooh.
Yep. 631-43. And that's kind of what I was talking about, right? Early in the expansion, it helps. But you didn't know that, of course, because how would you? Okay. The Bomb Warrior or the 4th Cookie Clicker video, which is about an update. Okay, quick clicker videos generally do pretty well, but the ones about updates specifically tend to do not so well because they get outdated after a while. I mean, the other ones do too, but it's less obvious. The Bomb Warrior deck, I think, was one of the ones that did better. Which now gives me that very conflicting thing where, like, default, I would say cookie clicker. I'm gonna go Bomb Warrior. I'm gonna go with my instincts here. Okay, 2,300 for the Bomb Warrior, which was very good.
22,000.
Versus 22,000 for the other one. So, you know, kind of close. Okay, we're gonna do one more round each, I think, and then we're gonna move on to the second topic. How about that?
Oh, okay.
Which means it's your turn. We're gonna go with the Descent of Dragons All Taunt deck with the very nice googly eyes on the Money Warbear, or with the Wolf Among Us Part 4.
I'm probably gonna... Yeah, I'm gonna go with Hearthstone.
Yeah, I would too. 102 to 1.
Oh, yo.
People, you gotta watch some of our... You know what? No, don't even bother. You should watch the podcast. You did. Okay, another Hearthstone challenge video where we're playing only cards without an effect text, or another Hearthstone challenge video where we play only humans.
Oh boy. This is hard.
And you might be able to tell that the ogre is very poorly cropped there. There's a straight edge for no good reason.
Yep.
I think that was my fault.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with textless minions. I don't know anything about that.
162 versus 40. That was correct. I think it's literally just that we did less challenge videos around that time. I don't think there was any like logic to why that is better otherwise. Oh, hey, here's an interesting one. A Hearthstone report about dragons coming to Battlegrounds, or a Hearthstone report about nerfs. They're just both Hearthstone reports that are half a year apart.
Oh god. I think maybe nerfs interest people more, so I'm gonna go with that. But I'm like just guessing.
Also, I can now see the nerf video actually featured Sparrowhawk, as you can tell by his little Sparrowhawk.
Oh, yeah.
And it was indeed correct. You got 126 to 55 there. Onion or not the Onion, which is probably the first time we did that, because otherwise it wouldn't be like the only thing in the title. Probably.
Yes.
Or a Hearthstone report about new cards.
Cards. Gonna go with new cards. One Samedi.
One Samedi.
Dead.
Yeah, 119 for the new cards and 26 for the podcast. A Nomi Priest deck spotlight, or a budget Conjurer Mage, which isn't a traditional budget deck. I'll have you know it's a challenge video where we try to make it cheap, but it does say budget in the title.
Oh god.
And they're both from 2019.
I know budget decks usually do pretty well, but apparently this is more of a challenge kind of thing.
Well, I mean, it does say challenge right there. So,
yeah.
The thing is, this is not our budget deck playlist, and this is not intended to be marketed as a traditional budget deck, but that doesn't mean that people wouldn't click on it. And, quite frankly, I don't know which one of those has more views. I would have to guess as well.
Oh god. I'm gonna go with the Nomi Priest.
Gutsy pick, and it was correct! 946 to 350.
Damn.
I think that might have been early on in an expansion, which, again, that helps, but I'm not sure. Ooh, boy. The second part of an arena run, or a Life is Strange Before the Storm video, notably without you. That's from the first playthrough.
Yes. Ooh.
As you can tell by the fact that it says blind.
Yeah.
Then again, Alex, I think, knew what happened in the game, kind of, so it was really just me going into it blind, as were you when you were... Anyways, doesn't matter.
Kind of tough. I am gonna go with... I'm gonna stick to Hearthstone.
I mean, I would think so.
Don't think Life is Strange did that well.
77 to 17.
Yeah.
Okay, a South Park Stick of Truth video with a very provocative title. And accurate, mind you. Because it's South Park and they do things like that. Or Hearthstone, a random Hearthstone Battlegrounds video.
Man. Gonna go with Battlegrounds. Just gonna stick to Hearthstone.
I mean, they weren't
basically
that popular, but neither was South Park. I mean, some of the South Park videos literally got like single-digit views, so I would think so. Yeah, 12 to 92. That was definitely correct, yeah.
New high score!
Yes, new high score. Budget Druid or
budget. Easy.
a random tournament video. not even like Trash Ball, just 2,200 to 15. That was correct. Ooh, podcast versus podcast.
Ooh.
Trash Talk Podcast number 200. The first time we played this exact game, by the way. Or Hearthstone Hall of Fame predictions and more quizzes. Trash Talk Podcast number 82.
Kind of tough. If I remember correctly, podcast 200 got around like 15 views.
That could
the
be
question
right. It
is
got more than most of our recent podcasts, possibly because I posted it on the Discord server. But did it get more than one of the old ones? That is the question.
That is the question. Because 82 is also kind of pretty old at that point.
It is. Is that a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Who knows?
I don't know.
I think podcast 1 might have actually gotten like more views than you'd expect, because sometimes people probably just click on it because they're curious about the start of the podcast and they're like, no, hell no, let's not do that.
Gonna take my chances and go with 82. Though it's probably really close.
7 to 105.
What?
I mean, to be fair, there was a Hearthstone topic in there, but
7? Pretty sure that got more, or did views get purged?
I mean, hey, listen. I just grabbed the data today.
I know. That's why I asked. Did views get purged? What happened?
So while Sergej is researching that, I'm going to just quickly present the fact that there is The Wolf Among Us episode 4.
What the fuck?
And there's a podcast about Alex hating D&D. I mean, that's pretty much what it's about.
I believe I was backstage during that. I'm not sure. I'm gonna go with
that.
Really?
Competitive versus co-op games? Were you not on that? I don't know, but
actually, it might have been. I don't remember, man.
Because that topic seems very sensible to have you on.
But yeah, podcast, since it's one of the more main-ish series.
1 to 23. You got it right again. You now are at a score of 10, which happened to rhyme, but that was not my intent. South Park: The Fractured Butthole, Bring the Crunch DLC episode 1. It's episode 1 of the DLC. So just to get our facts straight. Or a random Hearthstone Tavern Brawl video.
Ooh, the fact that it's episode 1 makes it, I think, makes it have more views. Though it's still not Hearthstone. So,
Sergej, I think it is literally episode 1 because of that reason. Like, it could have just been the Fractured Butthole episode however many, but I think I labeled the DLC separately, or numbered them separately, specifically to get more episode 1s out of it. You know? I can learn from what the big guys are doing, you know? Which I don't mean big YouTubers, actually. I don't think they do that as much. Mostly, I mean, like comic book corporations, mostly. They love doing new number 1s. Anyways. Yes, Sergej.
I'm gonna stick with Hearthstone.
I would too. 224 to 65.
Ooh.
I mean, to be fair, I would have gotten it wrong as well. And now it's my turn again. And now...
Only number 1s really do help.
Now, you have actually beaten my high score. And it's my last turn. And I'm starting out with 2 podcasts. And
it's gonna be easy.
The one on the right is a second channel podcast, meaning I'm gonna pick the first channel podcast, 17 to 2. It wasn't that hard. It seemed hard at first, then I realized where the trick was. Okay. Oh, the old Gonk OTK, or One Night in Kerosene single player content. I'm gonna go with Gonk. 2,300 to 20. Easy. Gamescom 2017 recap, because I was there, or, once again, the Copyright Podcast, which did horribly, so I'm gonna go with the other one. 10 to 1. Easy. Right, it was 1. Jesus. Face Hunter video, or single player video. I'm gonna go with Face Hunter. 530 to 45. Easy. Ash Vodland Clone Ball Tavern Brawl, or a Hearthstone report. Okay. This one is tricky, specifically because both Tavern Brawls and Hearthstone reports are very volatile formats, and they're both about Hearthstone. So, there is no particular thing there, but I think the Ash Vodland one is newer. I mean, it definitely is. That's not the part I'm thinking. That's the part I know. Which inherently should give it a bit of a bonus, because our audience grew over time, and both of these are not evergreen videos, right? Like, no one's gonna watch those now. Second of all, I think it was, this one was specifically spotlighting new cards, but not the first new cards of the expansion, which also normally doesn't do that well, so I'm gonna go with the Tavern Brawl. 207 to 75. Again, these are very unpredictable. Trash Talk Podcast number 111, or Live is Strange episode 3, featuring you. I'm gonna say both of those are not very popular. I'm gonna go with a podcast. But that is not an easy choice. 32 to 25.
That was too close.
Okay, a Hearthstone report where we are reporting on a developer Q&A or a podcast. Hearthstone report, obviously, 128 to 35. Hearthstone report or tournament, 29 to 36. I don't know what happened there. That was close. Galacrone's Awakening, I believe that was, when it was first announced, it's basically a mini-set, technically it's an adventure or a podcast. I'm going to go with Hearthstone, 167 to 12. Really old Hearthstone video, or South Park Stick of Truth episode 1?
Yes.
For fuck's sake! If only it had been episode 1, this would have been an easy choice, even though it's an old Hearthstone video.
I know what I would have picked.
And Sergej, dare I tell you, I'm currently at 9. So, first of all, my average today is going to be better than yours. But what matters is that can I beat your high score? And right now it comes up to can I tie it? On this very question, which is actually difficult. Which, I mean, to be fair, I would rather have it this way than have tie you on like one of the easy ones and get one of the tricky ones right before, because this makes it more, exciting from a storytelling standpoint. I'm gonna go with South Park. Shouldn't do this, but I'm gonna go with South Park.
That's what I would have picked too.
39 to 33! I got it! That was
Congratulations.
Close. Okay, Hearthstone Fortune the Baron's pack opening, which I don't think did that well, or Trash Bowl 2. That is literally the Trash Bowl game the second one, the time when it was actually planned. Oh god. I'm gonna say... I think the Trash Bowl did... I'm gonna go Trash Bowl. I have no idea. 152.49, yeah. Budget Warlock a podcast, budget deck, 1,800 to 37. By the way, all of those numbers are rounded to a couple of digits because of how these days YouTube displays it. It will be more difficult for us to grab the exact numbers, so it's 1,800. Yeah. It might as well be 1,752 or like 1,849, or something in between there.
Somewhere in between.
South Park: The Stick of Truth or South Park: The Fractured Butthole. I'm gonna go with the Fractured Butthole purely because there's more going on in the thumbnail. 40 to 37. Okay, bracket drawing or podcast. I mean, to be fair, it's a Hearthstone themed podcast, but it's a bracket drawing. There's live viewership. There's going to be 3 digits going on. Okay, it's 91. It's almost 3 digits.
Close.
The other one had 42, which is like halfway there. Q&A or Hearthstone video 50 to 226. Not that close. I think the Token Druid video did really well. Some of our wrestling videos actually did well for some reason. I actually didn't know that those were public anymore. Interesting. Anyways, I'm gonna go with Hearthstone. 1,900 to 1,600. I'm telling you, right? You can't foresee these things.
That was close.
All neutral Warlock, so that's a challenge video, or South Park. I'm gonna go with a challenge video. 114 to 342 on a South Park video. What happened? So my high score is 16, which I'm gonna say is pretty good. And yeah, that brings us to second topic. Guess what that brings us to?
Yay! Yes. Is technology the opposite of nature?
No. Thank you for watching. That's it. Okay. Jokes aside, I do think it isn't.
I actually don't know. Like, I have arguments for and against it. Kinda, sorta. Maybe.
Where is the actual distinction, even?
Yes. That is my argument for technology being part of nature. But I don't know, man. It's hard. Why did we choose this topic?
Because we thought it was going to be interesting. I'm going to actually, just for argument's sake, I'm going to pull up the definitions, but I haven't looked at them yet.
Oh, great. Oh, God.
Because, I mean, we'll have to do that at some point. But before that, I will say that, in my opinion, it's a bit arbitrary where we draw the line, because we say things are artificial when they're made by humans. But humans come from nature. Thereby, if a natural process causes something to be created, it should be natural. Right? Natural process creates humans create the thing is still natural. Even if it is very far removed from what it was before the human interacted with it, because human is a natural entity. Arguably. And that's the distinction between the supposed dichotomy between artificial and natural, is the distinction between human-made and non-human-made. Which in and of itself is not a great distinction, but that's not even technology specifically, it's just artificiality. Technology, I would say, is usually classified by being human-made, generally, and it usually serves a purpose, and it's usually, I think it's often seen as complex. Now, you could argue that a simple lever is technology, at which point the complexity argument goes away, but that's an opinion. Whether or not that counts, I think. And if a lever is technology, then Like, it doesn't get much more natural than that, right? Like, it's literally just a stick, basically.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Is fire a technology?
I mean,
like not fire in itself, but like kind of keeping it alive and in one place.
I was about to say, because fire naturally occurs. Like, if lightning strikes the ground, fires can occur, for example.
Yep.
I mean, there's probably other ways that can occur. Like, if a volcano erupts, there's also going to be fire.
Or like torches.
Yeah,
torches technology.
Yeah, but also, again, right? If lightning strikes a tree, isn't it just a big torch?
Kinda.
Which is where the question becomes different.
God.
And I would argue that is already a good argument why we maybe shouldn't consider those strictly diametrically opposed. It might still be worthwhile to make distinctions every now and again. So I can see why people like to make this distinction, because it has some degree of usefulness to it. But there will always be a point where the lines get blurred. And I do still think that it's, at the end of the day, arbitrary where we draw that line. Now, of course, there's a lot of things where we draw arbitrary lines, and oftentimes that is still okay.
I can make a joke about lines being blurry. Just gonna do this shit.
I can do that too.
Oh, yeah, great.
Not that well, but I can do it. I mean, to be fair, that was already almost touching the camera. I guess what I would have had to do to make it more blurry is just lean back. It's actually,
but out of focus doesn't focus on the pencil.
Yeah, I mean, it's always going to focus on my face, right? That's the whole point.
As long as your face is actually visible, but yeah.
Does that? Am I doing a thing?
Cover your eyes, yeah.
The thing is, right? Once I cover my eyes, I can't see if I'm doing it.
Yes.
Especially because the screen where I can see myself is right behind the camera, and that is by design, because I find it really hard to look into a camera while recording. But looking at, especially if I have the recording software open, where I can see how the recording looks, which is kind of important, because I need to know that everything's going right. So looking at that is a lot easier for me. But if I had that over here on this screen, which I know people don't see the screen, but you can clearly tell how this is not an optimal way for me to be recording a video necessarily. And that is why I have that screen over there. What were we talking about? Oh, right, technology. Yeah, it seems like computers aren't quite that natural. Or, like, intuitively that makes sense to us. But at the end of the day, we extracted materials from nature and then transformed them until they became a computer.
Yes.
And all of those transformations...
Until we made rocks that think.
Yeah. And all those transformations were made with tools that in turn were made through a similar process, and we can reverse engineer all of that back to natural resources that were just changed and recombined. What were the changed and recombined by? Us. What are we? Humans. Where did we come from? Evolution.
Yep.
I find it kind of pretentious. Is that the right word? No. Presumptuous? That's better. They both start with P. That's a coincidence.
Yeah.
It's very narcissistic, I think is the word I was originally going for. For us to say that because humans interacted with something, that makes it, like, objectively different from other things. Because we know that certain other apes have limited tool use. Is that not nature? Right? And then we can go further, right? Like, insects build very intricate things. Like beehives, those things are crazy.
Oh yeah. There's a lot of technology in there.
Yeah, but we would consider that we will consider that natural without even thinking about it. So, how is it that when bees make a beehive, that is nature, but when humans make a computer, that's not nature?
I don't know.
Listen, I'll grant you
doesn't really make sense.
I'll grant you that a computer is more complex, but again, complexity is a weird thing because even then we can't draw a clear line, and then we can just downscale it until we are at the same level of complexity, right? Is a clock more complex than a beehive? I don't know, but we can get simpler. I mean, like an analog clock, of course. I mean, like a pocket watch, like a grandfather clock, something like that. Like that's they don't.
I was thinking of a definition that could maybe draw a clear line between artificial and nature, but it had some flaws.
Yeah, I mean, listen, right? You can come up with one that works for most cases. You probably can, but
yeah,
there's probably always going to be an edge case where I can point at something and say, "What about that?" Okay, because two things that I said about technology, right? Man-made, oftentimes complex. You know what that also applies to?
What?
Humans. I mean, not like as a species, but like individual humans.
Oh, yeah.
Were made by their parents, and they're fucking complex as hell. If humans aren't technology, then I don't know. But like, humans aren't technology, that's weird, right?
Yep. So my definition that I just came up with that doesn't actually really work because there's plants and stuff, was that anything that exists that wouldn't exist without the species being a thing is artificial.
And by the species you mean Homo sapiens, I suppose?
Species in general.
Oh, so it's
making beehives artificial as well.
Okay.
For example.
Interesting.
But
I mean,
plants.
Yeah, because actually, so if you apply that to every species, that breaks down a lot of ways because evolution is also affected by other species around it. So, like niche partitioning and stuff like that. So every living being on this planet was affected by other living beings at some point in its evolutionary lifespan. If we, instead of saying a species, just say humans, which is, again, what most people would say for technology, we get a little bit better, but humans have also shaped our environment for, like, thousands of years. I mean, more actively only for a couple hundred, but
yeah.
I mean, still over 1,000, but like, I think over 2,000. What is it, 3, 4, 5,000 years that we've actually like had agriculture and that sort of stuff?
I think like, what wasn't it about like 10,000?
It might have been 10,000. I think I might have been thinking of civilization, which was a bit. I think
civilization happened later.
Yeah, because I think it happened after agriculture, exactly. Which is weird, but also kind of makes sense because after you do agriculture, you then start settling around farms, probably, and of course near water.
Yes, and you have actual supplies to support more than like a handful of people.
Yeah.
At once. So
a lot of that sort of stuff is really when we started affecting things on a bigger scale.
Should probably sit up a bit more.
That is your daily reminder to fix your posture, people. Yes, chances are if you're watching this, you probably have bad posture. Don't ask me how I know this, but it's probably true. So, what was I going to... Oh, yeah, right. So, that's when we really started affecting things on, like, a bigger scale. And we've always been affecting things since we existed, of course. And I mean, these days, like, the entire planet is basically affected by us. If only because of effects like global warming and whatnot. And, you know, the freaking ozone hole. Because, of course we put a hole in the ozone layer, because why wouldn't we? I still think that should, in theory...
Yeah. Would you call the ozone hole artificial?
I mean, again, if anything...
It wouldn't be there if it weren't for humans.
Yeah. I mean, making the artificial natural distinction, again, in my idea, is still somewhat asinine. If anything, it's maybe a spectrum. Which, of course, a lot of things that people thought were a binary are a spectrum. Like, actually, most things. It's really hard to draw clear category distinctions between things, we found out lately. But, I mean, you know, I mean, the most, I mean, these are the most pertinent examples are like, you know, gender, sexuality, and all that stuff, but there's others. I mean, there's very few things that exist on true binary. I mean, for fuck's sake, I think it was Intel was working on a technology where they actually have 4 energy levels to transfer their data, to transfer 2 bits at a time. So their freaking computer binary isn't binary anymore. Old news.
I mean, really a lot of digital communication isn't actually binary anymore. Like, it hasn't been for a long time, actually. They do transfer like up to, I think, 32 bits at a time.
Oh yeah, I mean, I guess glass fiber also works with light, so it's probably not binary either.
Yeah. No, it's not binary, but it's still digital.
I mean, yes, but digital just means it's discrete information points.
Yes.
Not on the continuous spectrum. Which, I mean, I guess, yeah, it's not on the spectrum, so it is still technically discrete points, it's just more than 2. But it's still, the funniest example of false binaries is still literal computer binary. But, yeah. Anyways. But yeah, there's no true artificial nature dichotomy. Artificial. Let's define that as well, and then let's start looking at some definitions, because that's probably something interesting. Technology is, and I'm just using whatever the first one is that comes up with DuckDuckGo for argument's sake, the application of science, especially to industrial or commercial objectives, or the scientific method and material used to achieve a commercial or industrial objective. I just realized the problem with definitions. We would have to at least define science, industry, and commercial. Which is, in and of itself, I mean, especially science, is not that easily defined. Right? Is making fire science? Is figuring out that one way makes fire and another way doesn't make fire science? Kind of. Right? Nature is the material world and its phenomena. Which, the material world would literally encompass everything we've made.
Yep.
Except maybe radio waves. You know what? I mean, let's not get into whether or not waves are material. I mean, you know, particle wave duality, so I guess they are. But, you know, let's not get hung up on it. And the other definition is the forces and processes that produce and control these phenomena. Great. Artificial is an adjective. Oh, the other ones were nouns, right. I guess I could have said artificiality, but that's just ridiculous. And artifice, I believe, is something else. Anyways, made by humans, especially in imitation of something natural. Well, isn't that just nice?
Yeah.
And the other one is kind of what I think we're getting for. Not arising from natural or necessary causes. Contrived or arbitrary. I think that's the one where the dichotomy comes from, or the supposed dichotomy comes from.
Maybe.
Not arising from natural or necessary causes, right? But again, right, what defines natural causes? And then we're kind of back to, you can kind of, if you break it down far enough, you can kind of make anything part of nature.
Mm-hmm. Especially the fact that the universe is probably predetermined. Doesn't help with the fact.
Okay, so I'm still flip-flopping on that one, but... Okay, so the question of whether or not the universe is deterministic basically comes down to, if you had perfect information, could you model everything? And the answer should be yes. But when it comes to quantum...
Not necessarily.
Stuff...
What?
Oh, the connection was briefly bad.
What's going on? Yes. Okay, what did you say?
I said, if you have perfect information, you should be able to model the entire universe, like, toward the future, thereby it should be deterministic. But when it comes to quantum physics, we actually have problems where we can oftentimes only calculate probabilities. So, if those processes are truly probabilistic, as in, it's not just that we're missing information to more accurately predict them, but they have true probability, then the universe is not deterministic. I mean, free will is probably still an illusion, but it wouldn't be deterministic.
There are other arguments to a deterministic universe, but I don't understand them well enough to be able to explain it to you.
Okay, in other words, if we do enough research, I feel like it, we might make an entire podcast topic about it at some point. But
Maybe,
don't hold your
yes.
breath. The other thing I wanted to mention, though, is the reason why it's even worth talking about, or in my opinion, why it's worth talking about this question in the first place, the technology and nature one. And that is that people sometimes have the mistaken belief that natural things are always better.
Yeah. Forgot about these people.
I mean, I kind of get it. Like, again, it kind of makes intuitive sense in a way, right? Like, we have lived in what we would call a natural world for a long time before we started making changes to the world, and we've clearly survived, so it can't be that bad. But also, our life expectancies have clearly risen since we went away from that, and technology has helped us live longer and healthier lives, so clearly you're wrong. I mean, you, this hypothetical person that was making the argument, not you, Sergej, or you, the viewer, necessarily.
Yeah. I think it also makes sense in the regard that, like, in the beginning, production wasn't really that good of stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Especially, I think, medicine wasn't really tested that well. So that probably didn't help with that.
I mean, yeah, modern medicine, when we say modern medicine, we have to kind of sometimes realize how modern we're talking, right? Like,
yes.
It's not that long ago that we thought bloodletting was a good way to deal with just about anything.
Yep.
Or, like, you know, humors and all that fun stuff. It's definitely worth noting, though, that just because something is artificial or, like, technologically contrived, does not mean it's bad. However, it's also worth noting that just because I mentioned a bunch of benefits of science doesn't mean that everything is better when it's artificial. But I guess science is kind of what gives us the methodology to figure out when we should use what. So, you know.
Yep. It's a process. It's going to take a while. You'll figure it out eventually.
Exactly. Also, by the way, about I should have probably said that earlier, but about the deterministic universe,
yeah.
Whether or not the universe is deterministic should not matter for you based on how you live, should not make you live your life a different way. Because
yes,
what you perceive as free will, even if it does not actually exist, still, for all intents and purposes, exists in the way that you act, even if it isn't actually a free will. So, if you make a choice, you're still making a choice, and you should still make good choices. Just because maybe it's predetermined that you do should not affect how you make those choices, if that makes sense. To me, that makes sense, but...
Kind of, sort of. You don't know the future, so you don't know how you'll act.
Yeah.
So... Or rather, you don't know how others will react.
Yeah, I also like...
To what you do.
I also tend to think that the universe is probably deterministic. Or, again, as I said, I'm kind of split on it a little bit, but I am probably leaning towards deterministic as well. That made intuitive sense to me when I first... I mean, of course, you should never trust intuition or something like that, but the explanations made sense to me, and...
Yeah.
So, it does seem like a sensible argument, but that still does not affect how I live my life, because from where I'm standing, it might as well not be. Because it doesn't change anything if it is. I mean, not from any practical standpoint. For my life personally. I think that's all I had to say about this. Do you have anything to add?
Not really. I think we said everything related and probably unrelated to that topic.
Happens. Which brings up a very interesting question, though. Sergej, what is your song of the week?
My song of the week is Bang by AJR.
I'm thinking it's time to go. Here we go. So put your best face on, everybody pretend you know this song. Everybody come hang. Let's go out with a bang. I'm way too young to...
That was a very short answer. I mean, literally because, both the artist's name and the title was very short. Fair enough. My song of the week is Ella Ella by Franz Gall.
Si tu l'as, Ella, Ella. Je ne sais quoi que d'autres n'ont pas, qui nous met dans un drôle d'état.
And in, of course, long TrashcanTV tradition, I guess, I'm gonna also translate the title. It means Ella, she has it.
Okay.
And just from hearing someone saying Ella Ella, just, try figuring out how to spell that when you're looking for it. You're not gonna be able to.
I'm not gonna even try that. It just sounds like you said the same word twice.
Yeah, because I kind of did, but also kind of didn't. So the first part is Ella, as in the name. It's just ELLA. That part is easy. The second part is the difficult one. It's Ella, which is L-E-L-L-E, which means she. It's French, by the way, in case that wasn't obvious so far. And la is particularly difficult because it's two words. And it's spelled as L''A. The A being meaning to have, specifically in the third person singular, and le in that case it being short for either la or le, meaning it in that specific case. The funny thing is, if it wasn't it that she had but something else, you would say it after the a instead of before. Like if it was an actual noun. But it would still be pronounced Ella because L already ends in an L sound and La starts with an L sound. So whether it's L-A or L-La, when you say it, it's Ella either way.
Oh God.
So And if you said she there, which would be elle là, I think it would also sound the same. In other words, it ain't that easy.
Yeah.
All that is to say, if you enjoyed this episode, leave like, comments, subscribe, Discord server, link in the description. Sergej.
That's it.
That's it.